Okay, this particular section is the reason why the Medicine Man Associates start this course. They talk about how they become a medicine man. And they said they want to do this so that people will know them, who they are, and understand what they have, and that they will not be afraid of them. And it's a beautiful way of life, beautiful resources. But when they started this course in the mid-70s, practically 100% of our people were deathly scared of this course. I had a classmate who had to take it, and we were talking about it, and I asked the students, I said, when I say medicine man, what's your image? You know, and there was a lot of white students in there, and I said, what's your image? And they said, a man with bright colored clothes, you know, medicine bundles hanging around him, you know, or dancing, you know, with a gourd or rattle, you know. And asked my classmate, tribal member, I said, how about you? What was your image when I said medicine man? She said, fear. I was scared. We were conditioned through boarding school that Lakota spirituality is devil worship. It was evil. And we're so conditioned to that we're scared of this. And that's why the Medicine Man Associates, when they organized, they started this course and say, if people know us, understand us, they will not be afraid. I'm going to share those stories with you. I asked them, I said, you want me to pass this on? And they said, that's why we present them. That's why we ask you to translate. So you go ahead and present our stories. I'm not going to use names, but I will tell you their stories of how they become one. Okay. They call themselves Ieska. Ieska, interpreter, translators. Today, the medicine men we have today, they call themselves Wakan. Ieska. What is Wakan?
Holy, spiritual, sacred.
No?
Yeah. Powerful.
Okay. Ia was Wakan. So what was that? Remember?
He was a rock? Spirit?
Ia
Ain't old first?
had the power. Ia had the power to give life or take life. Ia has that power. Ia could create or destroy. Good and evil was within Ia, both equally powerful. And we come from blood of Enoch according to our creation story. So all of us have those three things within us. We have the power to give life, take life. We have that power. We could create or we could destroy. And good and evil is within us, both equally powerful. So when they say, Waka Yeska, you interpret for powers or energy that has that Waka. A lot of times in this instance it refers to the altar, the ceremony of the medicine man. They all have their particular ceremonies. And they call that Waka. So the Waka Yeska is the one who interprets or translates that ceremony. There was a meeting between the medicine men and elders and the Jesuit community. And this was in mid-70s. One of the priests had a grant to meet with the medicine men and elders for 2 years. So when I had a chance, I used to go and listen to the dialogue. And it's an interesting session. But I noticed that the interpreter glided over a lot of things. Didn't really interpret everything. If he had, there would have been some major debates. But he kind of glided over a joke about it and move on. And the medicine men understood what he was doing, so they just let him get by with that. So finally I asked the priest, I said, "Are you going to write a book?" I said, "No. We're just exchanging commitments, our philosophies." He said, "Why do you ask that?" And I said, "I think you guys are tailoring this conversation, tailoring in a certain way." He said, "Nah." I said, "We're not going to do that." I said, "I think you should get another 1 or 2 translators so that our people, our men here, will fully understand what you guys are saying." But they never did. He just had that one interpreter. One of the sessions that I always remembered was this old priest. He died several years ago, but he served on Pine Ridge and Rosebud for over 50 years. It was about the second year. He got up and he approached the medicine men and the elders. And the interesting part was, up to that point, when our men, our medicine men and elders get up to talk, they will respectfully acknowledge each priest or brother. Father so-and-so, Father so-and-so. Respectfully acknowledge them before they talk. Well, this old priest got up and stood in front of these elderly men, and he said, "You guys," he said, "You guys have been saying that you can hear and you can see the spirits. Is that right?" They nod their heads. I said, "That's right." He said, "Tell me then, what does Satan look like?" They're kind of, some guys are kind of looking at each other, kind of looked at each other, and all the older ones kind of elbowed his younger brother-in-law, sitting with him. He kind of elbowed him, and he said, in Lakota, he said, why don't you tell him? He said, I know he's one of your brothers. They got into a little discussion. One of them stood up and he said, you really disappoint us with that question. He said, we were hoping that you would tell us that since you brought him over. He said, in our belief, in our way of life, he said, take a good look at yourself and everybody in this room. Every one of us have that spirit of that Satan within us. Just as we have that spirit of goodness, we have that evil within us. He said, both equally powerful. He said, we decide which one we want to develop. That's our decision. That's our freedom. I was telling a friend of mine, I said, when he said that, I said, I was a little upset because up to that point, when I did something wrong, I can always say, he talked me into it. He made me do it. But now I know I'm the one who's making that decision. So, and when they started this course, they come here and they tell their story. What I'm going to share with you is the stories from them of how they become a healer or medicine. We call them medicine men, but they call themselves Ieska. One elderly man they were talking about this, and one elderly man said, there are 7 spirits that will select an individual. He said, we don't know what these spirits are, but there are 7 of them. It could be an eagle, spider, all these spirits that medicine men work with. But there are 7 of them. They will select an individual. If they select you, you will have a visitor. A complete stranger will come to you. And it could happen when you're wide awake, during the day, or when you're sleeping. But the visit is so clear that you will remember when this person comes. One of them told a story. He said somebody came into his house. And he said this was in June. He said it's almost daylight. Somebody came, he looked at the clock and he said it was about 4:30. Somebody came in. And he said, I know I locked that door. He walked across the living room. Really heavy step, like a big man. He said, he came to the door and I looked and there was nobody. And a voice said, I come to give you a message. And it came from below. So he looked down and said, in the doorway, a full-grown man stood, but only foot tall. he came over and he introduced himself. He said, I represent the Iktomi nation, the Spider nation. He told him his name. He said, we will work with you. But before we do that, you must fast on a hill. 4 days and 4 nights, and we will give you instructions while you're fasting there. And he said, do it soon. In the meantime, if you need me, sing this song. He said, he sang him a song. And heat 10 stones, and I will come. But you must do this soon. And he said he left. He said, I laid there for a long time, you know, because he said at that time, he said, I used to drink a lot, and maybe I'm having DTs, you know, to see this little man talking, you know. So he really questioned that. And he kept pushing it away, kept pushing it. Periodically, that little guy will come and say, we're waiting for you. He waited for quite a few years, till he matured, till he understood. He was a fluent speaker. He knows Lakota culture, traditions. But the main question was, why me? He finally went to an uncle of ours who was a medicine man. It was interesting because he walked in and the medicine man looked at him and he said, we've been waiting for you. He knew that he was coming, but he couldn't tell him that. He has to make his own decision, you know. So when he came, he said they were waiting for him. So his uncle sponsored him, put him on the hill. Every day, a different man comes, representing a different nation. First day, it was the coyote. That night, he said this coyote was coming, howling. He got close to him and stopped. And a little while later, a man came up. Told him where to look the next day. He said, you will see a horse standing there. Mark that spot well, because right under his head is a pile of dirt that you're going to use for your altar. And he said, I represent the Coyote Nation. He said, sing this song for us. Taught him a song. Have these offerings on the altar for us, and we will come. These tobacco ties, and we will come. He left. Next day, a deer was walking, a black-tailed deer, around him, down below. He stood on the hill. He said he went out of sight. Later on, a man came up. He said, I represent the Deer Nation, the black-tailed deer. Basically told him the same story. Have these items on the altar, and I will come and help you. So every day a different man comes, representing a different, what we call nation. We don't have a word for animal in our language. Animal means second-class citizen that doesn't have a mind. In our belief system, that every creation has a spirit, has a mind. So we call them by name. We say Deer Nation, Coyote Nation, Spider Nation, but we don't call them animals. They are more in tune with creation than we are. So this man said that every day a different representative came. And he said all the while he stood there, he said behind him, this man and a woman kept talking. He said, I could hear them, but I couldn't understand what they're saying. But they're just talking behind me all the time. On the last day, they came in front of him. It was an elderly man, an elderly woman. And they said, grandson, we've been watching you. He said, you have a strong faith and you're a strong person. We will confirm what you experienced here. And we'll help you. When they came after him, when the uncle came after him, he took him in a sweat lodge. And he explained. He said, share your experience with us. So he told the people in the sweat lodge what had happened on that hill. His uncle's spirits said he is telling the truth because they witnessed the whole event. You need to do that process because all of us, we have the ability to create images in front of us. We can do that. We can influence our dreams that they seem real. So you had to go through this process to see if these visits are real or if you're doing that. It's a process that they take. Another one, he was 13 years old. He said it was summertime. He was playing outside. They had car bodies around their place. And he was playing out there, and on one of them, he said he laid down in the back seat and went to sleep. While he was sleeping, this man came to him and told him what to do in detail. So when he got up, he remembered everything. So he ran back to the house and told his parents what had just happened. He said, they really chewed me out. They really got after me, and they told me never, ever talk about these things. He said, they really scared me. And that man kept coming back, kept coming back. He said, finally, he went away. So he said, I was quite relieved. He said, when I was 18 years old, he came back. Same instructions. Just as clear as the first one. He said, by then, he said, I was running around with my peers. We were partying. We had girlfriends. He said, I knew that if I tell, they'll laugh at me. They'll tease me. I didn't have the courage to come out and say what I was experiencing. So he said he kept it quiet. He said this man kept coming back, finally went away. He said, I was quite relieved again that he's gone. When he was 33 years old, he came back again. He said, really strong. He said, by then I knew something must be done. He had one uncle who was quite involved in ceremonies underground at the time. So he went to him. He told him what was happening. His uncle said, maybe it's not late. Let's go see this Iesca, this medicine man. When they walked into his room again, this medicine man looked at him and he said, we've been waiting for you. You know, they knew he was coming, but they couldn't tell him he has to do this. He put him on a hill. He had that visitor telling him, giving him instructions. And this medicine man's spirit witnessed everything. And they confirmed what he was experiencing. So that's the second one that went through that process. That he was sponsored by a medicine man, and this medicine man's spirit witnessed all the visits. Another one said that ever since he was a child, he could remember. He feels like somebody's right here, next to him. Did you ever get that feeling that somebody's right next to you, and sometimes you'll look and there's nobody, you know? But most of his life, it was like that. And he says sometimes, you know, things happen around him that he couldn't explain. When he was older, I know the man, you know, I worked with him with a federal program. We worked as education workers at the time. This was in mid-60s. He said he had an outside toilet. So he said it was a beautiful night. Moon was out and bright. He said he went out to go to the bathroom. He said on the way back, he come close to the house, and all of a sudden he could see from the corner of his eyes these two figures come at him on both sides. He said when they got next to him, he blanked out. And all of a sudden he woke up, came to, and he was laying in the middle of a cemetery. He said people were crying, some were screaming. He said, I was so scared, I just laid there. I didn't move. He laid there for a long time. And he said, just as daybreak, this blue light out east, he blanked out, and next thing he knew, he was standing in that corner of his house again. He was also harassed. Till finally, he went to a medicine man. And they put him through that process. Each one of them had to go through this process to see if they are doing that to themselves. I had a cousin, he's quite older than me. He died a long time ago. He was a medicine man. I used to have him come to class. And he always tells my students, he said, never seek an altar, a gift. He said, I did. 10 years straight. He said every summer he would fast on a hill 4 days and 4 nights, asking for a gift to be a medicine man. He said nothing happened for 10 years. He said on the 11th year, he was standing there and a man came to him. And he said, you're very persistent. You don't give up. He said, you weren't meant to have a gift. But he said, we watched you every summer and you did everything with respect and properly to us. He said, we appreciate that. We will give you 2 gifts, but that's all. Don't go beyond that. He said 20-some years later, he said, there's times I wish I had never seeked that because of the pressure that he gets from the people. He said, so never seek an altar. If you're meant to be, they'll come to you.